All right, Panther Lair, we are back talking about the Pittsburgh Panthers opening day victory over the Radford Highlanders, talking about Cam Corhen. Now, in the previous video, I called out something that I really liked that he did, that being empty side pick and rolls with the primary ball handlers, particularly in the second half. Now, I want to draw attention here to something that did jump out on tape, something that as I was watching the game live, I noted. I don't think this is necessarily a problem. It's not a dislike, but it is something to monitor over the next couple of games. And that is, I'm not really sure Corhen is a high-level defender. He's probably at the, I always kind of visioned him more at the average level. I think that's not an energy or effort thing. I think part of that is recognition. He's a little bit of a beat slow to kind of figure out some of these complex actions. We're going to take a look at some of these sequences here. Some of these possessions, I have 4 of them. The first 3 are going to be in ball screen situations. Now here we go, halfway through the first half. Corhen is a little late if he was trying to be up to the level. And again, that's kind of part of that recognition. Now, what he does do a good job is instead of trying to get up to touch and be in the process of getting there, in which he's likely to get blown by, that's one of the things Jalen Lowe did really well against Radford on Monday. He establishes more of like a drop kind of here. He's going to meet the ball handler right at the 3-point line. Brandon Cummings gets a little bit caught on this screen, so he ends up being in a trailing position. This isn't bad. I think what Corhen does, though, is he tends to reach a little bit. And if he would have just maintained choppy steps here, he had a chance to curb the dribble penetration here, but he never does. I also don't know if this was a communicated switch because Cummings is not under that impression up until he just eventually peels back to find somebody else. So Corhen decides to take this on. It just doesn't have the lateral quickness, ends up being an and one. Here we go. This is going to be pretty much the first possession for Radford in the second half, or one of their early possessions here. Oops, back this up a second. So this, again, is going to be a ball screen situation. Lowe gets a little bit hung up on the screen, ends up trailing. Now, the ball handler loses control, which is kind of going to put Corhen in a position where he's going to try to get some hands on it. The issue that I have here as this clip plays out is once that is no longer the case, he now feels the pressure of having to get back to his man who is rolling to the basket, even though you have Guillermo here with a low man tag. But he completely turns his back to the ball handler. So this ends up being a pretty easy layup for Radford, but this ball handler just drives the lane while Corhen more or less clears a path with his back turned to the play. And when he finally turns around in a position to contest, this turns into kind of this jump interior pass and an easy layup. Now again, this is going to be with Lowe about halfway through the second half. Now I think Corhen does a really good job of just meeting the ball handler at the 3-point line. So not aggressive, just a little bit above. He's in a kind of, up the touch, but he's obviously establishing a dropper. He's not trying to show. Lowe falls down on the screen. Now in all these instances, the immediate defender on the ball handler doesn't do the best job. So that puts Corhen in a weird position. But that said, I still think certain decisions were a little bit, again, something to monitor going forward. So with your Corhen, he does a really good job. So he's dropping clearly, he's sinking back at the rate in which his man is rolling, realizes probably at the corner of his eye, Jalen fell over, and this ball handler just kind of puts on a nice potential shot fake. But you can see how easy he bites for this and ends up having to wrap him up and commits a foul. So not the worst ball screen defense. I think he's a little bit aggressive here. And given the fact that both of those guys, Cam Corhen and Guillermo Diaz-Graham, got into foul trouble, so both of the bigs, I think he needs to pick his spots a little bit more in terms of how much pressure he's going to apply on the perimeter. That applies to Guillermo as well. So we're going to look at this last possession here. And this is going to be an example of him not necessarily locating where his man is, given some of these complex actions. So this is not an effort thing. This is not an energy thing. This is probably an experience thing. This is probably a film review thing. So he locates his man here. But as these inside flex type screens are starting to occur here, right? This is kind of a rip screen, back screen. He's going to lose, and it's not even set that well. He's going to kind of lose sight for his man for a second, and as he trails, you'll notice the ball pretty much gets here as Corhen notices. So the ball is coming out of the hand. Corhen is looking to find his man. And so on the catch, he's just a little bit out of position here. Doesn't have the time to position himself in a way that's going to allow him to effectively contest this shot, because I think he recognized the movement so late. And then he just kind of concedes until he ultimately fouls. So not the end of the world here. I don't think he's a bad defender. Don't get me wrong. Don't make assumptions. But some of his recognition did not seem to be as sharp as some of the other players, particularly in comparison to what Guillermo did on Monday, which I thought he played pretty well despite the foul trouble, at least defensively and offensively, to be honest. So I think this is something to monitor. The pick and roll defense is going to be something that we're going to have to probably review throughout the course of the year. The front court depth doesn't look to be massive, so I think this is going to have to be a situation where Pitt may have to pick their spots and adjust the level of aggressiveness that you see here from both Cam Corhen, but also probably Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Just something to monitor going forward.